Now turning to the logical framework. Sometimes this is also called the project framework, or shortened to log frame. Sometimes it's called a project decision matrix, a results framework, or a design and monitoring framework. These are essentially different terms for the same matrix. There are standard sections. There are 4 columns: a design summary or description, performance targets, monitoring mechanisms, and assumptions and risks. And there are 5 rows: the goal, the purpose, sometimes called an outcome, outputs, activities, and inputs. So note that there is a hierarchical logical relationship, both vertically and horizontally, that links together all 20 frames of the logical framework. And a way to understand this is that the inputs allow activities to be carried out that will deliver the project outputs, which in turn will meet the immediate purpose of the project and contribute to the longer-term goal. So going from the objectives tree to the logical framework is a simple process where the means in the objective tree are basically what becomes the inputs and activities that lead to the end of project outputs, which are the same as the desired result of the objectives tree. And the purpose or outcome and the goals or impacts of the extension beyond the project boundary is equivalent to the results, both direct and indirect, that come from the objectives tree. So in relation to performance targets, it's important to ensure that each design element is implemented as planned. And so performance targets are specified, as well as the mechanisms for measuring these targets. And then in turn, the risks that could upset achievement are explicitly recognized and assumed to be mitigated, either by another project, by the government agency, or by other means. Unmitigated or unforeseen risks could actually torpedo an otherwise well-developed project. Now, the way to think about the logic of the logical framework is that your planned work will consist of the resources and inputs that you have available to operate your program. These contribute to a certain number of activities. So if you have those inputs, you can use them to accomplish your planned activities. These in turn lead to your intended results. Firstly, if you accomplish your planned activities, then you will hopefully deliver the amount of product or service that you intended at the end of the project. If you achieve those outputs, then you may benefit wider outcomes at your national level, at the regional level, or at the global level. And if you achieve those outcomes, then you may be able to contribute in some way to much broader impact, such as the Paris Agreement, for example. So the way the Green Climate Fund approaches the logical frameworks is worthwhile getting a better understanding, as you will often be involved in looking at this framework. So the first thing to note is that the ultimate objective, or the impact that is intended, is specified as a paradigm shift objective of the GCF. given that the overall mandate for the GCF is a paradigm shift. In the case of an adaptation project, this is increased climate resilient sustainable development. The GCF also defines fund level impacts, and in the case of an adaptation project, there are basically 4 of these. Increased resilience and enhanced livelihoods of the most vulnerable people, communities and regions. Increased resilience of health and well-being and food and water security. Increased resilience of infrastructure and the built environment to climate change threats. Or improved resilience of ecosystems and ecosystem services. Now, for each of these impacts, GCF has also indicated a number of core indicators. And in the case of an adaptation project, it is the total number of direct and indirect beneficiaries, plus the number of beneficiaries relative to the total population. It could also be the number and value of physical assets made more resilient to climate variability and change, considering human benefits where applicable. So note that GCF specifies the ultimate goal, the fund level impacts, and the core indicators. And in addition to these core indicators, GCF also suggests additional indicators. And there is a website where you can see those additional indicators that you may use in your own project designs. Moving further down in the logical framework to the outcomes, the GCF also specifies the outcomes. And in the case of adaptation projects, these are again 4: strengthened institutional and regulatory systems for climate responsive planning and development, increased generation and use of climate information in decision making, strengthened adaptive capacity and reduced exposure to climate risks, and strengthened awareness of climate threats and risk reduction processes. Then to go one step further down to the project or program outputs. These are left up to the program designer or the project designer to specify. And then you come down to the activities and a description of those and the inputs required to achieve each of those activities, and again a description of those. And that information then goes into your budget proposal. To summarize, all projects are designed to overcome a specific problem, but problems may have multiple causes. So a problem tree helps to sort out cause and effect. Similarly, all projects are intended to achieve a purpose or a goal, and if we fail to achieve that endpoint or ultimate effect, then the project is regarded as a failure. An objectives tree helps to identify the means of achieving a desired result or output at the end of a project, as well as indicating the longer-term outcomes and impacts that the project can contribute to in some small way. The objectives tree is simply the mirror image of the problem tree, where all of the negatives of the problem tree are turned into positives. The objectives tree may also highlight alternative pathways to achieve the desired result of the project, as well as indicating the possibility of multiple complementary projects to achieve the core objective. The objectives tree contributes the bones of the logical framework, which consists of 4 columns: a design summary, performance targets, monitoring mechanisms, and assumptions and risks, and 5 rows: goal, purpose, outputs, activities, and inputs, giving a total of 20 elements that need to be filled in. Now, most funding sources require a logical framework or its equivalent as a crucial part of any project proposal. The Green Climate Fund specifies the ultimate goal, That is the paradigm shift, the fund level impacts, which they have predefined, and the core indicators. In addition to the core indicators, GCF also suggests additional indicators for the outcome level, while leaving the project output targets and indicators to the project designers.